All right. Good morning. Good morning. Let's see. Where was I? We are live. Are we live? Yep. There we are. Hello. 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 All right. Welcome back to the stream. My name's Jason, and on my channel here, for the most part, I stream my adventures learning and creating 3D art. And for those of you just joining in, for the for the past couple of months, I have been working on a stylized diorama, kind of blocking out the set and the props and stuff. And most recently, I did a little lantern that's gonna kind of hang throughout the diorama. And I blocked it out in ZBrush using ZModeler, something I haven't really done before, and it turned out pretty well. I had fun doing it. And then I sculpted it in Blender, did the retopology, or excuse me, I sculpted it in ZBrush and did the retopology in Blender. And then I unwrapped it and packed it. And I'll just kind of walk you through my process here. So here's the lantern before I've really done anything other than marking the seams. And it's one object. Like it's I just named it lantern. And what I do is I make a duplicate of it, and then I triangulate it, and then I pack it. And after that, I make another duplicate just because I like to play it safe and make backups for my backups, just in case I mess something up. I split it off into separate parts. So I've got the lower frame, upper frame, the chain links, the mount for the chain link, and I have them all named accordingly. I have the glass. I think those are the only parts. And then I have the high poly broken up into the same parts, but as opposed to calling them low, I call them high. And the reason I do that is so when I bake my textures in Substance Painter, I get one texture map. So when I reapply my textures, I can go back to the lantern version that is still one object, and it'll apply the textures. It'll have one texture map. For those of you who don't know, if you use the approach to bake your models, whether it's in Substance Painter or in Marmoset, if you use the approach where you use materials to separate your object for the bakes, you will get multiple texture maps for each material. And that's fine if that's what you need, but it's kind of annoying when you want to apply your textures to one object, because you have to either take your textures into Photoshop and kind of composite them together, and it's a little bit of an annoying. So this way is the only workaround I've really found, and it works quite well. So again, just to reiterate, we have the original pre-triangulation. I mark my seams just because it's easier to do that before you triangulate it. And then I pack it. And then I have post-triangulation. I guess just show you the UVs. And you can see the UV shells. I'm not the best at packing the UV shells. Is it? Oh, that's separated. Okay. Um, for example, if I select one part of this, you can see this upper glass part where it is here. If you kind of take a mental note, I'll close that off. And if I go to the one that I split apart, should have left that open, sorry. Oops. That's right, I joined them just to keep it simpler. But they're in the same spot. So if I pick just this top part, there it is. Exact same area. No, it hasn't been moved at all or anything. It's just the only thing that changed is the mesh has been separated into their own parts. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts as opposed to just one. Hopefully that makes sense. Every time I do my bakes, I get 1 or 2 questions later, kind of asking exactly what I did. But that's how I do that. And then what I do is I export the high poly, and I just export it as an FBX. And whenever you export, make sure you hit selected objects. Otherwise, it exports everything in your scene, even if it's hidden. And it takes a long time, and it's super annoying. So just keep that in mind when you're exporting. And again, I have the separate parts, the chain links, the little mount, the frame here. So yeah. And I did the same thing for this one. I selected everything, and that's the kind of the key, is even though they're their own object, you can still export it as a single FBX file. And I'll illustrate that here. Excuse me, I think I have to sneeze. Be right back. All right, sorry about that. I had to sneeze and I didn't want to blow your eardrums out. All right, so here we are in Marmoset. I like to bake my textures in Marmoset just because it's I find it a little bit easier and a little bit more straightforward than Substance Painter, but the workflow is pretty much identical. It just looks a little bit different here and there. So let me start over here. So basically what you do is you launch Marmoset and you hit the little baker icon. It's a little loaf of bread here. And you load your high poly and low poly at the same time, which is one of the steps that's a little different than Substance Painter. And let's see, Lantern. You just go to your export location, and I have my high poly and low poly, and you just select both of them. And there we go. I'm just going to get rid of this null because we don't need it. So we have our high poly and low poly in the scene. And as you can see, it's one baker group. And it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different meshes in that one group. So when you have one baker group, what that basically means is it's going to bake out to one texture map for that group. At least that's what I found. If you take the multi-material approach, I think it bakes just like Substance Painter. It'll only bake a texture map for that material and each mesh with that material. Okay, so one of the features I really love is the ability to see your projection cage, because you can really see where your mesh is and where the projection cage is, and you can adjust it on the fly. So, whoops, let me Marmoset, call this lantern, and we'll just call it that. And let me just hide everything else. It's like most software programs, the eyeball icon is what enables the visibility. And Marmoset uses a very Maya-like navigation. I don't know if you can see that. Let me. You look right here, you can see the high poly is breaking out of the projection. So that's a good way to illustrate how you can adjust it to make sure it's capturing everything. As I've kind of mentioned before, I like to think of it as a protective barrier. And anything that sticks out of the barrier gets completely destroyed. So it won't be there when you bake. But I think we're good on that. And then I just kind of hide the high poly, because we don't need to see it. Let me enable everything else again. You don't need to see it once you've established your cage. Chain links. Everything looks fine there. So we'll just hide the high. Mount. Let's see, I might have to. Yeah, see these bolts, or yeah, bolts that I have are protruding out a little, so I'll. I don't know if you can see that right there. Is that visible? Yeah, it is. We'll just kind of extend the cage out. This is technically the same thing as Substance Painter when you're doing the. Let me just. It's called the ray distance, I think. I'll show you when we jump into Painter after we bake the textures. It's the same feature, but it's visible in Marmoset, which for me is fantastic because I don't know. I'm not a very technical software technical guy, because you know, I just kind of jumped into this not knowing much about how software works, particularly digital and 3D software. So having that visual cue really helps. I wish more programs were like that, to be honest. Okay. And same thing, I'll just turn the high poly off so we don't need to see it. And what are we on? The frame, the lower part. And the bolt sticking out right there. I'll just project that out a little bit more. And the nice thing is because these cages aren't one, or because this mesh isn't one mesh, this cage only projects around this part. So I don't have to worry about the frames or the meshes baking onto each other. Same thing here, the bolts are sticking out. And there we go. That should be good. Oh, excuse me, I'll be right back. Oh, all right, sorry about that, guys. My allergies are being a little more obnoxious than usual today. All right, so we have our cage baked out, or we have the cage set up to make sure it's encompassing our high poly. And then we'll go into the bake. And a good rule of thumb whenever you're baking, regardless of what you're baking in, is to just do a test bake. So I'll go ahead and do that with just the normals at a low preset, and we'll go ahead and bake. And this, you hit this little preview button and it'll show you what you got. That looks pretty decent. Make sure there's no glaring artifacts. I think we're looking pretty good. All right. Now we can go ahead and do the real bake. And similar to Substance Painter, you can pick which maps you want to bake. You just go down to your maps drop down here, go to configure, and for use in Substance Painter, I'm going to use the position. So I click that and it pops up down here. I'm going to use thickness. It pops up down there. Oh, hello. Welcome. I'm just getting ready to bake my maps out for this little lantern I've been working on. And then you just enable the vertex color, and same thing, it pops up down here. And basically you can go through and pick what you want to bake, and it'll bake it for you. And I think I need, let's see, that's all I need. And you just have to make sure you enable them by checking them. So we want the object space normal, the position, curvature, thickness, ambient occlusion. And I'm not using materials for my ID, I'm using vertex color. So we click vertex color. And for the ambient occlusion, I like to turn off ignore groups and add the cavity, because I do want the shadows to cast onto each other. If you don't want them to cast onto each other, you can just hit ignore groups, and then it only has the ambient occlusion that that object has on its own. All right, now I'm gonna crank the samples up to 16, go up to 4K. I usually like to, this is probably only gonna be honestly, probably only a 1K texture, maybe 2K when I apply it. But it's easier to down res than it is to up res. And if for some reason I need to make it a higher res texture, I'll have it available. So I always like to do that. And now I'll bake. And I just like to give a warning that the stream might get a little buggy while I bake, because it really it tends to hit my system pretty hard when I stream and bake at the same time. So I'm still here. It's just my computer is getting rocked. So let's bake. All right, and while we're doing that, let's see. Hello, good morning. No, this isn't an asset for a game per se. I've been working on a diorama, so it's a little more high poly than like a game asset. All the props I've been working on, I guess you could call them mid to mid high poly. Since I'm not too worried about their performance, it's just going to be for a diorama piece of my own. And I kind of want to like make it look as good as I can without it destroying my system when I render it. Plus I just wanted to get better at the high poly to low poly workflow. So that was one of the main reasons I'm doing this in the first place, is just to get a better understanding of how to block out an asset, sculpt it, and create the high poly details, and either do a retopology of the sculpt or utilize my low poly blockout as the base mesh. And I've been doing that for about a month or two now, and I've definitely learned a lot. I'll say the hardest things for me so far were learning how to use Substance Painter and bake the maps right, and retopology was pretty hard. The worst thing I find is UV mapping and UV packing. That's my least favorite thing to do. But yeah, it's a very similar workflow to a game asset workflow, from what I understand. And let's do the little preview, and there we go. Turned out pretty good. This is going to be a pretty small thing. I really didn't need to have all these details, but pretty happy with that. That looks a little odd right there. That's okay though. And I can, since I baked the vertex colors, I can just kind of apply those. I mean, I only have two separate things on here. It's going to be metal and glass. Thanks. I haven't figured out how I'm going to do the glass yet in Substance Painter, but I'll have to cross that bridge when I get there. So let's save this out because I like the way that looks. And we'll call this lantern. Just lantern. And when you bake your stuff in Marmoset, you don't have to export anything. It just saves all your bakes as PSD files wherever you told it to. That was something for some reason, I couldn't figure that out. It was driving me nuts when I started using Marmoset. All right, let me just save this Blender scene, just to make sure I don't screw anything up. Well, let's jump in a Substance Painter here. Oh, there we go. And we'll just update later. File new. And since I'm going to be using Blender to render my diorama, I'm going to go to OpenGL. And now I'll just select my mesh and lantern low, and we'll hit, oops, I want to go and I'll set it at 2K. And since I baked my textures in Marmoset, I don't have to worry about importing a high poly and baking it. But basically, it's the same thing as this, the texture settings. You would just add the ones you want, and then they'll pop up here and it'll bake them when you're ready to bake. And when you bake them, it's the frontal distance. That's what I was trying to think of. That's one of the main reasons I like Marmoset, is because you can actually see that cage and you don't have to guess. But other than that, I find the bakes are both pretty good in both. I do feel like Marmoset has, for some reason, their bakes are a little bit nicer. So let's go ahead and apply those. So what I'll do is actually, let me start over so I can show you the right way. I forgot to do that at the beginning. So same settings for everything. I'm going to do 2K OpenGL because that's what Cycles likes in Blender. And since we baked them in a different program, our textures, you hit Add, and you go to the location where you saved them, and you just select all those, and it'll import them into your project file here. We'll not save that one. And now, if I go to texture settings, where are you at? Hello. Oh, here we go, sorry. I can just click on like the normal map, and it's already in my project file. So I'll just apply those and see this, the object space, yeah, object space normal, ID map, curvature, ambient occlusion, position, and thickness. Thickness, there we go. And there we go, all nice and applied. I'm probably gonna have to, I didn't even think about this. I probably have to make a candle to put inside of that to emit light. I don't know why I didn't think of that, but maybe I can just paint something on there. So I guess I could jump into Smart Materials here. And I'm gonna try, just for fun, I have a metal material that I made. Wood, that's the wood. Metal, there we go. And I do sometimes have a little issue with these. For some reason, when I was learning how to make my own smart material, I did something wrong, and I always have to go through and manually add the maps into it. Like down here, I have to add the world space normals from my project file. World space, position, thickness, curvature, and ambient occlusion. I have tried to fix it, but I can't exactly, I haven't been able to nail down exactly what I did wrong. Because I made a wood texture also, a stylized wood texture, and it seems to work fine whenever I use it. Thickness, position, and world space. And in a minute here, it'll kind of come to life. Curvature and ambient occlusion. There we go, and you can kind of see the stylized metal look I have applied to it. I exaggerated the highlights and darkened the depth of the cracks to have a little bit of a different random color to it. Not severely random, but just enough so that it's not the shadows aren't the exact same color as the metal. And now I think I'll try this glass visor for the glass part. Ooh. And I'll just use the color selection from my color ID map. And I can just change the colors. So I want this to be like a yellow, more red, I guess. Let's see, and I don't want this to affect the normals or the heights or the roughness. No, I do want it to affect the roughness and the normal. I don't want any metallic in there. That's what I want. At least I think. Ooh, yeah, that's too shiny. Let's go ahead and turn the roughness off. Let's turn it on and I'll make it more rough. That's what I'll do. Let's see, roughness. I've never done any glass materials before, so I'm kind of in uncharted territory, so to speak. Let's see, I'm gonna make the color a little bit of a brighter yellow. And I think I'm going to see what happens when I add a generator to it. Mask builder. Nope, not what I want to do. Might just have to paint it out. You add a black mask and then add a generator. Okay, and then I want it to, let's see. It's already affecting it in some parts, but I want it to, let me get a brush. I want to paint out the corners. And I need to add a paint. And this, what I'm going to paint. Okay. Let me get a different brush. Do this dirt. No, well, maybe that'll work. Back to my mask. I want the color to be a really dark, smoky color. Oh, that's the wrong one. Oh well. Anyways, let me go back to the paint. I might just have to add 2 paint layers to it. Definitely not looking like glass though, huh? Where's the gradient? Let me try. Let me hide that paint layer for now. No, it's not doing it. I'm gonna have to research that a bit more. Let me just. Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out how to make glass because that's not working out at all. Let me just try to go to regular. I don't know if Substance has a glass material. You know what I think I have to add is a alpha channel. That's probably part of the problem. Because you can't have glass if it's not clear anywhere. Emissive glossiness. Oh, I'm gonna need the emissive because I want it to glow. I'm also gonna need transmissive, no, reflection, glossiness, diffuse. Where's the... There should be a thing to let you add the opacity or alpha channel. I'll have to I'll have to research that more. I don't want to waste your guys' time while I try to learn how to make a glass material. But let's go back to the smart material and we'll just throw that glass visor on again. Should show up a little better now since I have an emission. And I'll just turn the color into brighter. I still don't know if I want it to affect the metalness, but let's see what that looks like when we do a little render of it. Sometimes substance looks different when you are doing the... Okay, that definitely looks too metalish. Let me turn the metalness up a bit. And the roughness. Up. Ooh, that's super shiny. Try without either of those. Guess that looks a little better. I might have to just jump into Photoshop and paint that to look like there's a candle in there. I should have thought about that at the beginning. But let's see. Crank the emissive up. That is not all. This emissive is not working at all how I was hoping it would. I'll have to look into it a little more. But anyways, just do a little render, see what we came up with. Layer. Oh. Layer. We just want like bloom, I think. Turn the luminance down quite a bit. I wonder why the emission is blue. What do I have to do to make that not blue? That's what we need. Hello. Make that like red. That should be a little more interesting. I want it to be the other way around though. Let's see. Invert. Scale, rotation. Scaling. We don't even do none. Orbit, follow path. Invert, there we go. Oop. Okay, let's see. This is where I want to add my paint layer. I want that to be here. There we go. That's a little extreme, but that'll work. I really should try to use my stylus, but there we go. That was a little more what I was looking for. It's still way too harsh. It looks like freaking lava on the sun. And painting with the mouse is probably not the smartest technique to use. But that does look better. At least it illustrates the idea. And I can work off of that and figure out how to deconstruct it. That's kind of one of the ways, for me anyways, that I learn how to build my own smart materials. I basically reverse engineer them and then try to build my own. All right. Now let's see what happens when I turn some of these back on. I'll just turn them all back. What the hell? Okay, now let's render that bad boy. It looks sort of better. Still a little too harsh, but and this I gotta tone down that bloom big time, huh? It's just way too aggressive. Let me try another. Let's try standard. Cheap lens. Nope, not doing anything. Not the glare, it's the now we should be good. That looks alright, I guess. I'll do a quick render. Override viewport. Do a little 1080p render. Let's see, templars. I don't really know what that does. I think that's all I want. Shader settings. Let's see, turn the emissive up a little maybe. That up to about 5. Whoops. I think or yeah, I do have that glass in there, so that should do something. Surface. There we go. That render for a minute. The nice thing about the substance, the iRay thing, is it if you change something, it just starts off from where you were. So like if it's a little too many fireflies in there, you can just turn up the max time to like 30, and it'll just start from where you were as opposed to starting all the way over, which is pretty nice. You know what, I'm gonna do yeah, I'll just save that once it's done rendering. That looks pretty decent. Still have some fireflies in it, but this is just a quick test render. And call this lantern. Boom. All right. Mission accomplished with this prop. Well, almost. I still have to mess around and do some research with how to make glass, but I feel like it turned out okay. I have something to build off of with the glass visor smart material. I'll try to find a way to give it a little more of a stylized look. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that turned out. That's definitely not going to be the final product. I do want to make the glass look better. I just wanted to illustrate it so that you guys could kind of see what my vision of it was going to be. So with that said, I'm going to call it a stream, and it is Wednesday. On Friday, maybe I'll try to do some renders. Or maybe I'll build the smart material. If you guys are interested in watching that, I know it might be a little boring, but I try not to do the boring stuff. Like, I find that retopology and UV mapping and UV packing are not that fun to watch. But if you guys want me to stream that stuff, I don't mind it. I do have to build this smart material, so maybe on Friday we'll mess around with that. But for now, I'm gonna call it a stream. I've got some chores to run, so those of you who tuned in, thanks for coming in. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the comments and questions. And yeah, I will see you guys on Friday for some texture building in Substance Painter. Until then, have a good day, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace. Substance Painter.